Hi, everyone. We're so excited to be kicking off the first of our September summits with an awesome conversation around body image and stigma and diabetes. These discussions are important, and we're so glad to have the opportunity to have them all with all of you and with some incredible groups of panelists like the one you see here. I'm Jordan Dakin, Beyond Type 1's Director of Programs, and I'll be handing it off shortly to this group, but just want to thank you all who registered and are in the chat, and all of you who are watching live on Facebook. Our team is keeping an eye out for any questions, and we can take time for those a little further into the conversation. But I'll hand it off here in just a second to our awesome group of panelists, and we are so excited to chat with you. Anna, if you'd like, you can go ahead and take it away.
Hello, everyone. How are you? Hi, everybody. It's nice to see everyone and welcome to the September Summits. We're here on behalf of Beyond Type 1 tonight, and we're going to be talking about body image and diabetes. We are really excited to be here. But before we begin, we'd like to thank the sponsors because without them, the September Summits would not be possible. So thank you very much to OneDrop, Roche Diabetes Care, and Xeris Pharmaceuticals. And thank you again to those of you that are tuning in tonight and utilizing the chat function to ask questions. We will try to answer them throughout the course of our discussion tonight. And if not, we'll move those further along in the discussion as well. My name is Anna Norton. I have lived with type 1 diabetes for 27 years. I am also the CEO of Diabetes Sisters, an organization whose focus and mission is to provide support and education for women that live with all kinds of diabetes. I am so honored and pleased to be among this group of panelists tonight, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Julia, and then we can move on to the others.
So I'm Julia Blanchett. I am a diabetes care and education specialist in Cleveland, Ohio at the Cleveland Clinic Diabetes Center. And I am about to start a research fellowship at the University of Utah School of Nursing. I've also lived with type 1 diabetes for 21 years, and I care for people with all types of diabetes. So I'm happy to be here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kylene. Most know me as Black Diabetic Girl. I have been diabetic since 2010.
Hi, everyone. I'm Liz. I was diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic in 2014, and it's been a journey ever since. So I'm excited to share my experience and my knowledge and my mistakes with everyone, so that way we can all kind of fail forward together.
How's everyone doing? I'm Dex. I'm based out of LA. I am a fitness trainer, actor, and fitness model, and I've been living with diabetes since 2013.
Well, thank you all. And let's just dive right in. Let's start talking a little bit about body image and stigma and how we deal with that living with diabetes. So let's just start with the positive. How do, and anyone, please feel free to answer these and talk about them, and I'll delve into as well. But how do you practice body positivity? You know, we have diabetes and some of us wear devices and those kinds of things. So how do you practice body positivity?
I can go first. I wear a pump and a CGM. For me, it's showing that plus size is not bad. It's not wrong. That diabetes comes in every shape, size, color, whatever. So, I mean, first and foremost, I wear my devices, that where it fits me, where I'm comfortable, but I'm not shy in showing them. I don't mind, I don't care about the stares or things like that, because it starts conversation most of the time, and then which turns into education. So, I mean, I think for me, it's showing them, not showing them, but showing them works. And I don't let, my size or anything get in the way of that.
That's great. What about you, Liz?
I completely agree. I used to be very shy and like, oh, I know people are squeamish about blood. I don't want to test my sugars because of it. But now that I have the glucose, the continuous monitor, like on my arm, like I have to flex to show it sometimes. So I see it as my strength now. But it's just reminding myself that my body is what it is, and I have to do what I need to do to take care of it. It's not about a fashion statement or fitting in. It's about being alive and being healthy.
Wow, that's a really great message. And what about you, Dax? You're broadcasting to us tonight from a gym. So share a little bit about that.
For me, I think the most important thing is one, just being mindful of my body and checking in with it, making sure that if there's aches or pains, taking care of that, and thinking about just my mentality of, it's so hard nowadays to get caught up on images from Instagram and all of that. So just knowing that my body moves the way it moves, that's just because who I am and not compare it to anyone else's. So super important to me to, I don't really think about the weight or what my body looks like, but how it moves.
Sure.
I think that's just a great way to measure, what am I looking for? Just like, instead of just focusing on what you see, it's more of a physical thing. And that can be a lot more helpful for positivity with your body.
Sure. What about you, Julia, from the standpoint of a person living with diabetes, not from the healthcare provider, but just as a person living and thriving with diabetes?
I've actually been wearing diabetes technology since I was 7 years old. And as a 7-year-old, that's something that made me feel really isolated and different. And I think once I started meeting other people with diabetes who also wore insulin pumps, I looked at it as something that made me unique in a good way. And now as an adult, I'm for fun, I'm wearing 2 CGMs right now. Like, who does that? But I also, like, whenever somebody's looking at it, I do use it as an education point or a conversation starter. And everyone's different. Everyone has their differences, and this is just me. So.
Yeah, that's a wonderful message. I mean, I can share a little bit of perspective for me. For a very long time, I didn't want to wear any kind of diabetes device because I was a young girl or a young woman, and I was really concerned about how that was going to affect my dating life, how it was going to affect the people that I encountered. I was starting my career. I was, in my 20s, and I remember I worked in a children's hospital, and I was wearing my pump after I was convinced that I should go on pump therapy, and I had it on my, on my waistband, and there was a girl in the elevator who was a patient at the hospital who also had type 1 diabetes, and she said, like, she is wearing a pump, you know and for me that was really eye-opening, because then I thought, like, I'm not ashamed of wearing this on my waistband, because look what I just did to this young girl, who was 9 or 10 years old. And really I started to think about it that way. And like Liz, I like to wear my diabetes devices. I always say, like, I wear my diabetes on my arm, right? Because I wear my pump on my arm, I wear my CGM on my arm. Um, and always use that as a teaching moment, but also as sort of a moment of pride, right? That we're living well, that we're doing the things that are beneficial to us, for our body and our mind, and for other people that we influence, and that follow our example. We're not perfect, but the fact that we wear this so prominently on our sleeve, on our arm, really shows a lot about how we approach diabetes and the positivity and the body image. But what are some of the misconceptions that you may have heard, or some of the unhealthy narratives that you've encountered when it comes to body image, device wearing, weight, stigma, among our own community, people living with diabetes? Can anyone talk about that? Has anyone experienced anything like that?
I haven't really. When I was diagnosed with diabetes, or type 2 diabetes, I was probably in the best shape of my life, six pack, all of that, working out twice a day. And so, like, the stigma around that people living with type 2 diabetes are often overweight, or they don't work out, exercise, they don't move, was it's just crazy to me, because every time I talk to someone about diabetes, they always assume that I just have type 1 and not type 2. And the stigma around that, it's great for me to come from this perspective, because I can let people know that's not the case, that people living with type 2 diabetes, that's not always the reason why. And then a lot of those behaviors that causes type 2 diabetes aren't because of a person is just lazy, or not doing the things necessary to be healthy, but a lot of things we learn growing up, or just learn behaviors, and you don't ever realize that it's not the right way to manage your health. So I've experienced it before, not personally, but because of family members. A lot of my family members have diabetes. I've been able to educate people who still have that stigma surrounding type 2 diabetes?
I'm the complete opposite of Dex. So when I was originally diagnosed, because I was a little overweight, they automatically thought that I was type 2, along with like the color of my skin and for those two things kind of, well, in my age, right? And so when people meet me, they automatically assume that I am type 2. Back in February, me and two other of my girlfriends, we were at a conference, and a woman said to us, like, "Oh, you guys are here," and we were like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Oh, do you have type 2?" And we were like, "Nope, we're all type 1." And so I've dealt with that personally, where people just automatically assume that I'm type 2 because of my weight. And that's, all type 1s aren't small, we all come in different shapes and sizes. And so just dealing with that part and telling people, or getting people to understand that diabetes doesn't discriminate, it doesn't care how old you are or what size you are. It's going to knock on your door. It's knocking on your door. And so that's just kind of been my hardest thing, one of the hardest things, and in and out of the community, honestly, where people just assume that, you're a specific type because of what your weight, and your weight, like Dex said, like, he was in perfect shape and they diagnosed him with type 2, whereas I was diagnosed with type 1, but didn't have any real underlying issues. So it was, that's what I've dealt with within and outside of the community.
That's really great perspective, and to hear from both sides. What about you, Liz?
Like 90% of my family is type 2 diabetic. And so I always grew up like seeing my family members not necessarily take care of themselves. As a Mexican, it's not really in our culture to talk about health, to really, take care of ourselves. And so I always saw it as, it is what it is. You're doomed. Once you're diagnosed, it's downhill from there. So why even try? And so that image of type 2 diabetics being lazy, not caring, not working out was something I actually lived. And so it was ingrained in me. And so when I was diagnosed, it really messed with my mindset, because I'm like, well, now I'm one of them. Now I'm destined to be overweight, inactive. But like Dex said, I was actually in the best shape of my life. Like I was actually working out, following nutrition. And the joke in my family is that the only thing that does run in my family is diabetes. And so I've gone from being the outside person looking in to now being on the inside looking out. And it's those misconceptions that really pushed me to share my story now and to really help people break through that barrier, because it's sometimes those misconceptions that prevent people from seeking help, because they don't want that label of being a diabetic, which comes with all these stigmas.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think that you pointed out something really great, Liz. You talked about being Mexican, right? So my family is from Cuba. So there's this there among, and I think among a lot of minority communities, there's a lot of stigma. If we're too skinny, we're too skinny. If we're too chubby, we're too chubby, right? If we're a little bit chubby, it means that we're like well nourished, right? If we're too skinny, then we're malnourished. If we don't eat all the food on our plate, we're being wasteful. There's a lot of things that play into, I think, just our culture, but not just our culture. Then it ties into our lives with diabetes, because life with diabetes is so centered around food sometimes, right? Whether it's type 1 or type 2. And so, we can talk a little bit about that. I think that's an interesting topic. Just to mention that, like when it comes to our body positivity, weight stigma, living with diabetes, and then bringing in our culture, where a lot of our holidays are centered around eating and eating a lot, and foods that are not necessarily diabetes friendly, or that we have sort of a misconception from our own family members that don't understand that we can eat a little bit, but we can't eat a lot of it, or that we can eat it as opposed to not eating it. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that. And then Julia, when we're sort of done with that, maybe you can tie in and talk a little bit about people that you see that live with diabetes that sort of experience this as well. So I'll let anyone go. Please go.
Well, I think for me, the family part wasn't as hard because I had my cousin is a type 1, then my dad is type 2. So we've had diabetes both ways in our families. And then we have nurses and whatnot who, place that education. Mine more so comes from people who might see my devices or see me online, who like to dictate what I should and should not eat, and what I'm having too much of and things like that. And my response is always, I'm going to eat what I want to eat as long as I do what I need to do correctly and do it in moderation. And I think what I've learned personally is the information isn't necessarily equal when it's given out, right? So when I was diagnosed with type 2, it was that fear that was placed onto me by my healthcare team on what not to eat and what is bad and things like that. It wasn't until I went to diabetes education as a type 1 where it wasn't, okay, that's not bad, it's do it in moderation, or make sure you use the correct amount of insulin, learn how to carb count and those type of things. And I think that the misconception or the lack of education also starts like with the healthcare team or the providers, I should say, because we don't always get the same information. Like I got so much more information being diagnosed as type 1 than I did as I was type 2, but everything relates. I didn't change anything, but my management style, medicine wise, and that piece right there to me would help the community, in and out of the community. If they're all given, we're all given the same information and just tweaked per person, then we wouldn't have all of these misconceptions in our community and outside of our community.
That's great. Great perspective. Liz or Dex?
Diet wise for me, the way I eat now is just based off performance. I do try to do CrossFit competitively. So in the beginning, when you work out as much as I do, you have to eat a lot of carbs to keep up the energy. And that didn't really react with my type 2 diabetes. So a lot of times I would have high blood sugar. And then what happened with that was that I kind of got obsessive with exercise. So I would eat something and then immediately, I don't know, hop on a bike or go on a slow jog or something so my blood sugar would stay down, because I didn't want to use medication to help aid with my diabetes management. But I learned that, well, first of all, that's wrong. My body got really beat up from exercising so much. But yeah, moderation is the key. I do like to eat low carb. It's just best for my body. But there's times when I'm in situations where I go out with my friends and they're like, let's get ice cream afterwards or something like that. And then a lot of people give me strange looks because I'm not supposed to have ice cream. Or that's the stigma around like having the diet of a type 2 diabetic. And then I just educate and let everyone know that it's just moderation and I can't have this kind of thing. And that's kind of been the best thing I've learned, is being able to go out and be social with people who don't have diabetes and not have to fear the consequences of eating some of the same food that they have. So yeah, and it just took a while, kind of like there wasn't much information about how to eat at first for type 2 diabetes. I've kept hearing different information here, different information there. I remember when I was first diagnosed, I brought type 2 diabetes for dummies, like trying to learn as much as I can on the topic. But luckily, because of communities like this, I've been able to get information on how to eat and everything like that. So yeah, it's pretty much, I just eat low carb, and every now and then when it's a celebration or something like that, especially in my culture, Sunday dinners or like we said, like Thanksgiving or Christmas, there's a lot of food around. I love macaroni and cheese. I'm never gonna stop eating that. So yeah, it's kind of just how I deal with my diet.
What about you, Liz?
Sorry if my video or sound cuts off. Internet is not great. But when I was first diagnosed, I I knew that nutrition was going to be a big part. But of course, I didn't have my diet. So I would, exercise as much, binge eat, work out again, and like try to balance it that way, but it doesn't balance that way at all. And when I would try to eat healthy by eating a salad, because that's what healthy is, it's only salads. And my family was like outcasted me. And that was really hard because I was considered the black sheep and like the weirdo who prefers to eat vegetables than tacos. And so once I was consistent with eating healthy, balanced nutrition, my family started kind of understanding like, oh, this isn't like a fad diet she's doing. Like she genuinely cares about her health and like maybe we should too. And maybe we should support her. So I've been very open about what I eat, mainly because my nieces and nephews, I want them to know that they can eat a balanced nutrition meal as a Hispanic. It doesn't have to be, you can only eat your cultural food or you can only eat healthy food. Like there's a mix between those, and it's something that's not discussed very much. And my experience with nutrition, I was given a handful of pamphlets and was told to like just read them and do it. And I'm like, this doesn't really help me. This doesn't tell me how when I'm sad, I might emotionally eat. What am I supposed to do to deal with that? And so I didn't know what to eat. So I would binge eat and then feel bad about eating. So I would eat more. And it was just a really vicious cycle. It wasn't until I found other nutrition programs that really helped me and worked for me that I was able to really take control of my nutrition and really take control of my sugars. And something that Dex mentioned that I really wanted to point out too is like, I had the mentality of, I don't want to be on insulin. Like that means that my diabetes is really bad. I don't want to be on medication. I want to just work out and eat right and, do it the natural way. And I fought it for so long that my body like was really hurting from it. It never would come down until finally I gave in and I, take oral medication and I take insulin. And my background is in molecular biology. So I have a PhD in cellular molecular biology. So I know what insulin signaling does. And I know that if my body can't use what it makes, it's going to break down sugar and my sugar levels are going to go up. And so it wasn't until I saw it from like the scientific side, what's actually happening, did it's not to let my emotions get in the way of my health. And so not being on medication is bad for me or, represents any sort of stigma. It's my body needs insulin. I need to give it what it needs. It's just like any other disease. If you have a cold or a flu, you take medicine for it. You don't try to like outrun a cold or outrun the flu. So why is this any different?
That's a really wonderful perspective, and oftentimes in our communities, we see that, we hear that, right? If you're on insulin, it means that you were bad, right? If you have to go on insulin, it means that you didn't do a good job. If you have to add another oral medication to your regimen, it means that you failed. And none of those things are true, right? It just means that the treatment that we're on is not working. And so we're introducing something else to help us along the way. I think that sometimes it's really hard for us to understand because diabetes is not the sort of one size fits all for everyone. So what works for me doesn't work for Kylene. What works for Kylene doesn't work for Julia. And what works, and so on and so forth. And so I think that you really surmise that really beautifully, Liz, when you talk about, understanding the science behind taking the medication, and what that means. And I think that that's really, really important to get that message out to the people in our community, but also to the mass in the general community, so that they better understand what people with diabetes live with and encounter. So we'll move on to Julia. Julia, can you share with us a little bit about what you see as a provider, with people as they talk about, body image, body positivity, and how it relates to the things that we're talking about tonight?
Yeah, sure. So, this is kind of going to go back to food quite a bit, but one of the commonalities I see with people with all types of diabetes is that they come into my office and they all feel guilty or they feel some sort of shame, and it all relates to food. I see this with people who are newly diagnosed with any type of diabetes for the most part. And I think, having a positive body image is related to feeling good about yourself and not feeling that shame and guilt that a lot of people with diabetes experience. So a lot of what I do is I sit down with people who are living with diabetes and I try to focus on, how can we help you feel healthy and nourished, not necessarily how do you eat well or how do you eat good. Like, I try to stay away from those terms because that can kind of contribute to more of the guilt cycle. And I try to focus on what works well for that person and what that person can keep doing that is a positive. So.
Yeah, that's great advice. If only we had providers that did that every single visit and every single time that we saw them, right? So that we wouldn't feel defeated or deflated, right? Because, we all know that diabetes is something that is very, very much self-managed. And we don't spend a lot of time seeing our providers. So the time that we do see the providers, it really makes an impact on us. And that's what we carry throughout the year. So if we think about it, we visit our healthcare providers maybe 4-6 times a year, and so that's very, very impactful in the way that we live the rest of the 362 days out of the year. So that's wonderful that you say that. Let's move on something. We have a question in the Q&A. It's a little bit about food and how it's centered around living with type 1 diabetes. And the person says, I've always feared being a bigger person with type 1 diabetes, and ultimately it resulted in an eating disorder. Has anyone on the panel experienced that or had challenges that they have faced, and how have they overcome those living with that fear?
I didn't necessarily have like a fear or anything that turned into an eating disorder. I just wouldn't kind of, I guess, really post myself on social media as much as I probably would have liked to because of my size. But it just got to a point where two things took place. It was, I need to change this and I need to change it healthy, but I'm not mad at my size either. I'm still going, I know that I'm healthy. I don't have, all sorts of other elements or illnesses or anything going on. So for me, it was almost just like my mindset and staying, knowing that it doesn't matter this, I'm not, I can't think of the word or what I want to say, but it's not a bad thing that I might have a little more fluff on me than someone else posting or someone else walking near me, by me, wherever. It's about you and your weight and how you are healthy. Because just because I see people who are smaller than me doesn't necessarily mean that they are healthy. So that was the mindset that I got into. And then for me on social media wise, I started following women who looked like me, weight and size and things like that, and seeing them constantly post and not care and just have that I'm living life is the mentality that I moved toward. And I guess it's kept me in a nice space, to not fall into eating disorder path or anything like that.
Yeah, that's excellent to say that, and again, if only, we were all given that message, or if only we all saw that message when we had these conversations. I read a lot of different magazines, and I work out, and by no stretch of the imagination do I have a perfect body, but I feel good, right? That's what I always say. I feel good. My blood sugar is in range, right? My clothes fit nicely. And so, but for a very long time, I did not feel that. I felt that I had to be a certain weight. I felt that, if I was over a certain weight, then I was failing again, that I might have to take more insulin, that my doctor would be upset with me, that I would get yelled at, all of those things. And it's taken me a very long time to just say, you know what? I feel really good working out 3-4 times a week. This is what I do. Like, I know that I'm not going to be a marathon runner. That's not my thing. Right. But I know that I could go and dance a couple of times a week and then I feel great. Right. And that my jeans fit really nice, or that, like my arms don't feel flabby, or whatever it is, or that my A1C or my time in range is better. Right. So those are sort of the measures that I take to really, really feed into that body positivity. Because I know that I'm not perfect. I know that my body is never going to be perfect. And really, what is perfect? Right? It's perspective, right? So does anyone else have anything to share about that when it comes to eating disorders or disordered eating as a result of diabetes and wanting to sort of be quote unquote perfect?
General experience than my personal experience. But I think, everyone has their own unique journey. And I think although we all experience a lot of the same barriers and a lot of the shame and guilt cycle, I think there's so many factors related to diabetes that can contribute to eating disorders, like the focus on carbohydrates, the focus on not being able to have stable blood sugar all the time, no matter how much you try. So, I just want to say to whoever submitted this question, like, try not to be so hard on yourself and try to focus on things that you're good at and that, things that are positive. But I think, it is common to have eating disorders or disordered eating when you have diabetes, and you're not alone. So.
Dex, do you have any insight to share with us?
Maybe not so much on eating disorders, but I think just the image of, like you said, the perfect body. I think the perfect body is what you're comfortable with and doing the things that you feel is necessary to keep your health and mental health intact. I come across a lot of people who come into the gym and they're skinny, and on the outside, they look really healthy, but when we talk and discuss things on the inside, they're not. So looking at weight or your body shape is really not the measurement you should be looking for. It's really tough to like, I have a member at the gym here who lost over 150 pounds, and he's way more comfortable in his body now, but I don't think people understand how hard it is to, after you lose the weight, keeping it off, because often, a lot of times, it comes back. But I think if you find that balance where you're doing the things necessary for you to be happy and healthy, and basically look on the inside of yourself, then you won't have to think so much about like what are you eating and everything like that, because you're not comparing yourself to anyone anymore. You're kind of just self-love and self-feeding yourself and the energy that you put in yourself.
Sure, that's great points. I want to move this into a little bit as we talk about our own communities. And we touched a little bit about this at the beginning, how we often stigmatize each other. Type 1 stigmatize type 2, type 2 stigmatize type 1. How can we start to erase those lines of stigmatization, and help one another, really understand. Dex, you brought up this great point. Like, you were diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and you were physically in this great shape, right? So how do we address the fact that, people with type 1 have fluff, like Kylene says, which I like. I'm going to use that from now on, that I have fluff. But that people with type 1 diabetes might have fluff, and people with type 2 diabetes, might be in this sort of really, really great physical condition or physical shape. But, how do we help one another just really understand that it's not about that, that those stereotypes that we have, been taught over time are really just misconceptions, and how do we do that as a community? How do we do it through social media?
I would say having events like this where you people from both communities together is really important. if it wasn't for this, I personally don't really know too many type 1 diabetics, so I wouldn't know their perspective or know their experiences if it wasn't for discussions like this. So having some sort of way of bringing both communities together, I think, is really important. And having people from both communities sharing their experience. So that way we can learn from one another and really, put ourselves in each other's shoes. Like, we're both fighting similar fights. There's no reason why we can't fight them together. So I think having that open communication is really important.
I agree with Liz. I think that having more of these discussions with both parties involved is what opens, it opens the door for other conversations. I think that representation definitely matters. We need to see more of type 2s who don't look to be overweight, and then we need to see more of type 1s who aren't necessarily slim, so people can also see that visualization that, oh, there's someone that looks like me, I look like that person. And then more people, you get to be more comfortable with sharing your story, or it brings other people together. Like Liz said, she doesn't really know many type 1s, but her finding us and other people, it will open the doors for her to meet other type 1s, and vice versa, for other type 1s to meet type 2s and hold that dialogue and share that information.
Yeah, that's wonderful. What about you, Julia, as a provider? So, you can give us a perspective as a person living with diabetes, but you're also a provider. So how can you help us bridge that gap?
Yeah, so I mean, I think everything that Kylene and Liz said is like nailing it. I think, as someone with type 1, when I became a diabetes care and education specialist, I wasn't sure how I was going to connect with people with type 2, and I thought maybe it was very different. But the more stories I've heard and the more people I've connected with, the more I learn that we really do experience a lot of similar emotions and a lot of similar self-management like barriers and issues. So I think just knowing that we do have more in common, or we have so much in common, right? There's not that much that we don't have in common. So sure, the pathophysiology is slightly different, right? Or the cause could be slightly different, but there's so many things that are similar that I think it's so important we support each other so that people don't feel as alone.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And with what everyone has said on this panel tonight, so insightful and so profound, and all coming very, very clearly from our own perspectives of living with diabetes, as well as Julia's years from visiting with people that live with diabetes over the years. I think it's really, really important to always focus on the fact that as people with diabetes, our goals are very, very similar, right? And our risk is also extremely the same, right? So our goal is similar, time and range, right? Setting goal parameters for ourselves, right? And trying to stay within those lines. I love to use that term, right? We're staying between our lines, whether it's with type 1 or type 2, but also to really try to prevent anything that comes our way. So all of us have to take care of our hearts and our vascular system. All of us have to take care of our kidneys and our circulatory system. And all of us really, really clearly need to take care of our mental health, and so without that mental health, where are we when it even comes to our management, when it comes to our physical activity, when it comes to talking about our weight, when it comes to talking about what we eat every day in our nutrition, and also, about how we approach stigmatization when it comes to our body image and our weight and wearing devices and checking our blood sugar in public, or even going to pharmacies to pick up medication. So I think it's really important that we sort of bring this all together, because ultimately we do have that same very, very goal of living the best lives that we can with diabetes with as little complications as we can possibly manage, right? And also understanding that if we encounter complications, there's no blame to that. It's just kind of par for the course, right? Diabetes doesn't go away from one day to the next. It's this journey that we're on. So we have to be proactive about the health. And I think that's wonderful. And everyone has shared that. We're running a little bit out of time. So I just wanted to ask, I don't see anything else going on in the chat. Does anyone else on our panel tonight have anything that they want to share before we wrap up?
I think
there's one more question. Sorry.
You can go.
I was just going to say there is a question in the Q&A section.
Oh, there's another one. Oh, thank you. Okay. Okay. So we have a question, and I think I'm going to pass this one to Julia. As a provider, the question is, could you give us some examples of causes of type 2? I was always taught the stigmatized reasons. So that is a great question. Thank you for whoever asked that question.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, I think we've heard that ethnicity and then family, other family members, direct family members can pass type 2 onto you. We all know that the stigmatized reasons are lifestyle and, you know, related to eating and exercise that may or may not actually be the causes for people's cases, but other medical conditions, you can have secondary type 2 diabetes, especially if you're on medications like steroids or had a transplant and you're on a lot of those types of medications. We see a lot of post-transplant diabetes where I work. We also see a lot of like post-chemo and radiation diabetes. So just anytime your body's under a lot of stress, that can kind of trigger type 2 diabetes as well. So, you know, just besides genetics and your ethnicity and those lifestyle factors, there are other stressors that can contribute to type 2 diabetes.
Sure. Also, Julia, what about women that experience gestational diabetes?
Yeah.
What is their risk for developing type 2 diabetes after they deliver their babies?
So I can't give you the exact statistics. I would love to on this one, but you know, they do have a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. So it is important to, they do the oral glucose tolerance test again after delivery, and then to just monitor for type 2 diabetes, because there is a correlation. You don't always develop type 2 diabetes after you have gestational, but a lot of times you do. And even like the risk for gestational diabetes, age is a huge one. I see people that don't appear as like the stigmatized version of someone who would have diabetes, but that, you know, they're older for being pregnant, and that's one of the risk factors for gestational diabetes. So
great. We have one more. We'll take one more because again, we're running a little bit out of time. And this is an open question for anyone, and I think anyone on this great panel could answer it. The person asks, how can I explain to people I see on the daily that I'm comfortable the way that I am, that I do not need to change without being rude? So I'd love for everybody to weigh on this one.
be yourself. Embrace yourself, be yourself. It's, you know, it's okay to tell people that you're comfortable the way you are.
I agree. I'm a firm believer of speaking my piece and saying how I feel, and keep living your life and tell them, you know, and if they choose not to want to understand what you're saying, then remove yourself from that friendship or from the situation, but don't let them change you, and live your life.
Absolutely. Liz, Dex?
First of all, you don't owe anyone an explanation. Like, what you're eating, unless they're buying all your meals for you, what you're eating is none of their business. And I could see how if they're coming from, you know, good intentions of like, you know, I care about you, I don't want you to eat anything bad for you, but you're an adult, you know what you need to do. So yeah, just how everyone else has said, you do you, you know what you need to do. And like we've mentioned, stress really body. So if these people are causing stress in your life, medically, you need to just remove these people from your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about coming off as rude. If you're comfortable who you are and you know you're doing the things necessary to be happy. If they have an issue with that, that's their issue, not yours. So speak your piece every single time and don't let anyone change you.
Yeah, I love that. I love all of your answers. I'm gonna say, my advice is there's a great quote, right? That says like, what you think of me is none of my business, right? So, you know, I from personal standpoint, I love to bake. I love to bake and I love to cook and I love to post pictures of it and put it on my Instagram, right? And you know, and people always say to me like, "Oh my God, like you have diabetes. How can you eat that way?" You know, and then I'm always like, what does it matter to you? Like, you don't know. I don't post the pictures of my salads because they're boring, right? Nobody wants to see lettuce and tomatoes, you know? But if I bake a beautiful loaf of bread, it's pretty, and you don't know if I'm eating it or if I'm not eating it. So again, what you think of me is none of my business. I do me, right? So that's a great message from everyone. Thank you guys so much. We are going to wrap it up. I wanted to thank these awesome panelists, Julia, Kylene, Liz, and Dax. You guys have been really, really awesome to have this discussion with tonight. I'm so honored and impressed to hear how candid and how frank you have been about your lives with diabetes and sharing. And I look forward to working with everybody as we move on in our journey with diabetes. I wanted to thank those that have asked questions, the comments that are inundating us on Facebook. I can see them scrolling like when I look down. And I wanted to thank the sponsors for helping us have this session tonight. One Drop, Roche Diabetes Care, and Xeris Pharmaceuticals. I'm going to pass it back to Jordan because she'll talk a little bit about the next summit that's coming up next week. So thank you guys very much and have a good night.
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you so much to all of you. This was incredible. I think I speak for all of us when I say I learned so much from that conversation, and you said it, it's got me really, really excited for next week's conversation as well. So please join us back here. We're going to be talking about food, culture, and diabetes. It'll be the second of our 4 September summits. So we'll be here every Wednesday. You can register to attend the actual Zoom webinar, or you can just catch us live on Facebook. But yeah, thank you all so much. Another huge shout out to everyone who made this event possible. September summits are only doable with support from the JDRF Beyond Type 1 Alliance, as well as our 3 sponsors, One Drop, Roche Diabetes Care, and Xeris Pharmaceuticals. So thank you all so much and have a great night.